does not need any introduction because, just like Jude alluded to, our resource person is synonymous with communication, with public relations, stakeholder management, and everything. His face is widely known, and what he does is also well known. But to fulfill all righteousness, we will have this brief profile. So if you are ready, please let's have a profile of our resource person.
In 1988 with CTNA. Yomi Badejo Okunsanya. Yomi Badejo Okunsanya is a consummate public relations practitioner, a history graduate of the University of Benin. He started his career in marketing communications in 1988 with CTNA, a Lagos-based advertising agency, and became a director in 1991. He has acquired extensive experience in the areas of marketing, advertising, public relations, and crisis communication. He has worked on various accounts for both private and public sector clients, including multinational companies. He was at the forefront of combating the Bellevue airline crisis occasioned by airline crash at Lisa. He also provided crisis communications intervention strategy for Allied Energy, Microphone, and Sensitization when their organizations faced internal crisis between 2004 and 2008. He has handled various public communication activities for British American Tobacco Nigeria, Transcorp, Renaissance Group, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Kojo Nigeria Limited, Shell, and Virgin Nigeria. He is a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, NIPR, and was a past chairman of NIPR, Lagos State Chapter. Currently, he is the president of African Public Relations Association, APRA, and he is on the board of the Internal Public Relations Association, IPRA. Ladies and gentlemen, Yomi Badejo.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Let me say, what's the first lesson that we have learned today? What's the first lesson? Yes, sir.
All the pictures that are there, Yomi did not wear a beard.
What is the first lesson? Yes, sir.
I think can we get to the issue? I think there are trends that are happening in the industry, and no matter how much experience or how much knowledge you have, you constantly have to come back and renew and learn, because the landscape is always changing. And coming to the theme, we are in a very unique situation coming out of COVID and all of those issues. We constantly have to update ourselves.
Thank you. Anybody else want to try? One more person here.
Well, I'd rather talk about relationship, because prior to going for the tea, I guess everywhere was cool, but now, well, at least we know a bit about ourselves now, and I think the environment is a bit less tense, and I think relationship is very, very important to know ourselves.
Thank you. You are all correct, but you don't have any of the answers I'm looking for. The first answer I'm looking for today is that you must learn to tell your own story. Build your own narrative. Don't let anybody else tell your story for you. I do this quite often, and my name is like a paragraph. So some people mess it up, Yomi Badejo, Yomi Badejo, and all that. And this is an old, really, and like the president said, My looks have changed, my COVID look. Yeah. But so I decided that I will tell my own story. I will not let people introduce me. I will introduce myself. By emphasizing those things that are important to me and not what other people think. Public relations is the art of telling a compelling story. And the first person that you will tell a story about is yourself. If you do not tell a compelling story about yourself, you have no business talking about somebody else. With that, good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I have my order of protocol, and because there's something I noted, excuse me. As I've introduced, my name is Yomi Badejo. Mr. President, my brother, chairman of the conference, and my sister, and my queen, irrespective of what anybody says. Your professional council members, of course, fellows who are present here, the members of the organizing committee, Obong, Jude, and if you are the class captain, you must be Obong, we confer you the title of Obong of Directors Conference of NIP. All those who support the eye, all those against the eye value. So from today, we are known as Obong, Jude. Gentlemen of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. There's something I like to do whenever I have the opportunity to participate. I like to be the best. I just have this very competitive spirit. So they're going to grade this session in comparatively with other sessions, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you're going to do. When it comes to me, you mark very good, very good, very good. Excellent, excellent. So we're going to make it very lively, very lively. Please, as I'm going along, just stop me. The organizers will let me know how much time I have. Please stop me. Some of the questions I asked when I was putting together the paper is that what is the essence of this conference? And a bit of that I will address later. Like I said, I'd like it to be an interactive session. Stop me whenever you wish. Let's share knowledge. I just happen to be the one that has put the discussion topic together, but let us all do. Now, I have a key challenge because the moderator or the MC said, what do you want out of this? And I asked myself even this morning when I woke up, what do you want out of this? And it rises from my key challenge. What is that challenge? I realize that many people in communication do not end up in the C-suite. You know what I call the C-suite? Chief Operating Officer, Chief Chief Technical Officer. And when we even get there, we hardly become the CEO. And why? I think the only difference I can talk about is the CPAX group. There's somebody who, from communication, is now heading the, what's that department? SACO. He was the pure communications person, and now he's the CEO. And I hope that one of these days, you bring him to be able to tell us how he was able to rise from the position of corporate communication and become the CEO. And one of the challenges I realized that many of us have is that we know too little about too little as corporate communications people. We are insular. We focus on the work that we do. A director in corporate communications must know about HR, must know about administration, must know about finance, must know about law. If you intend to become the CEO, let me tell you, the people who are CEOs are taken from department. They didn't start at the beginning of their career to be CEOs. They were accountants, or they're engineers. They are who else? They are lawyers. And somehow or the other, they end up being the chief operating or chief executive. I want to challenge the directors conference that one of the core parameters we must have is that we must produce several CEOs from this conference. it is a challenge that we have. There's another thing, the dynamics of leadership change, and I think the president mentioned that it's changing over time, and we're now in the 21st century. So what are the dynamics of leadership right now for us? What are those things we need to equip ourselves with as communicators, as public relations professionals, that will make us end up at the top of the ladder? I find out that many times as public relations practitioners, we are talking to each other. 2 weeks through that, we're always speaking to one another. I want to see more of our conferences, bringing in the engineers, bringing in the accountants, so that we will sell the value we have and put it on the table. And therefore, people can put us there. There's a Yoruba saying, and I'm going to try and interpret it. It's those of you who understand Yoruba. It says, I cannot see that, I cannot dance. What does that mean? You are only permitted not to get involved only if you are not there. As long as you are there, you must get involved. So those of you who are in Central Bank, what is e-Naira? Have you explained it to us? What is the opportunity for public relations in the launch of e-Naira? What is the opportunity for public relations in the collapse of the 21-story building? What is the opportunity for public relations in the sex tape of Tiwa Savage? Stop running commentary. Get involved. Because all these things are what people who do not have our professional knowledge leverage on, and they are smiling to the back. And many of us do not have the way out. So I challenge you today that as you leave here, you should revolutionize your thinking. Don't just be an addition. It comes to something that the president knows I'm very passionate about. Whether I'm in one office or the other, it's called affirmative PR. And what is affirmative PR? It means that we must sell aggressively the value of public relations to all our stakeholders. Be they government, be they head of our businesses, wherever, we must be able to sell public relations and let public relations know that, let the stakeholders know that there's a value to public relations. You don't joke with it. Don't go and bring people who are not qualified to sit on this seat. Why? Because any small mistake you make can cost the organization down. I remember, again, going to the sex tape, somebody got involved. And don't talk about the solidness of the tech. I'm not interested. I'm looking at the business side. And somebody got involved and spoke to the lady concerned and said, look, you got to do something about it. Said, no, my fans love me and all of that. The very next day, 4 brands dropped her. 4 brands dropped her as an ambassador. If she's going to be playing this December, it will probably be in the nightclub. Because, madam, can I ask you, you are the director, would you invite her to come and play at your, perform at your corporate organization end of year party? Okay. No, that's a public relations disaster. So while people are commenting, some people should have been there to advise, because it's an opportunity, it's right up our street. Forget about the solidness of whatever it is. I'm not there, I'm not judging her. I'm just saying that it was a huge big PR opportunity which we must learn from. So PR itself needs PR. PR itself needs PR. It's a case of physician, heal thyself. We cannot be selling what we are not giving. I'm happy that the president and the team are doing this peace summit. It's part of integrating our relevance, but we must have our eye on the ball, Mr. President. There must be clear messaging. This is not, we must be able to communicate with right. The reason why we're doing this is because we are public relations. One of the functions of public relations is public resolution. And that's what we're, the messaging must be clear. The takeaway must be clear, Mr. President. Otherwise, we will be drowned in the cacophony of all the issues that are happening in this country. Okay, now let me go straight to my own paper now. I just did that as an intro, and I thought that it's good for us to be able to use that to establish. So, I've been asked to speak on the subject of sensitization, advocacy, and lobbying in the 21st century. And everything I've spoken to you about is actually encompassed in this thing. Because even public relations need sensitization, public relations needs advocacy, and certainly public relations needs lobbying. We're going to be talking about this, and I have so much because it concerns almost every aspect of our life that I couldn't put everything down. I hope the way it will go is that we'll have time for a bit of discussion. So many things that I've not included, we can discuss those things. I think there's a segment for case studies. I have a video I'm going to show, and then we can have the discussion. Are we okay? Have I lost you? You're still with me? You said not yet. I hope I do not get you. Okay, let's go on. Please click. This is the outline of the presentation. Very quick. The objectives of this presentation, from my own perspective, one, to help you to sharpen your skills, to use the tools of sensitization, advocacy, and lobbying to achieve your organizational goals. To equip participants with the knowledge to break out of your comfort zone. We need to be a jack of all trades and master of many. I said that you must know everything, you must know something about everything. As a public relations practitioner, you are allowed to be a jack of all trades and a master of all. That's in my own opinion, that's the only profession that allows you to be. Because you are dealing with different things at different times. It's to help this august audience to acquire new tips and tactics to curate the new ideas that help us improve our approach to delivering our professional goals. Attending the conference will be seen as investing in yourself. And please, while you're having it, let's have fun. Let's be happy about it. Let's, now, the aspect of this that we CMC, of which I have the privilege to be the group managing director, has a number of companies under it. And when we looked at it, this fell under one particular business of ours, which is known as Reignite Public Affairs. Reignite Public Affairs is headquartered in Abuja. And let me just run through what they do. So this was the responsibility, me working with the Reignite Public Affairs team to put this presentation together. It's a lot about it. We've worked across different things. But let me quickly go to the services that okay, let me put it like this. We empower organizations with tools that enhance governmental and legislative relations. We shape public policy and opinion towards achieving those business goals. We have a strong network of affiliates and partners in Nigeria and Africa, strengthening our footprint and capacity to operate anywhere in Africa. So what are our services? Political communication, research, policy and research analysis, training and capacity building, advocacy and issues management, part of what we're talking about today, government and legislative relations, otherwise known as lobbying, right? Lobbying and mediation, then crisis. Even as we are sitting, some crisis is unfolding. Are we going to wait until one day some people come up and say, we are crisis managers, we are not public relations managers? People have been eating into our pie. When we started this business, it was a huge pie, and people started taking slices of it. The first set of people who took slices of it were the event managers. They said, we are not public relations people, we are event managers. And they carved out the event aspect of it. Then another set of people came. They said, we are digital, we are social media managers, we are not PR people. Again, they sliced a part of it. Today, the bill that one of my businesses, BCW, which is affiliated to Boston Corner Group, the third largest PR network in the world, part of the money we pay the most is not to the traditional media people. Do you know who pay the most? They call them influencers.
Yes.
Influencers. Mr. Macaroni. In millions.
Mm-hmm.
I sign daily millions. Some of them I've never even heard of. They were giving me a report this morning and said one of our clients is what do you call it? Tweeting, what do you call it? Number 2 on Twitter, only because we paid a group of influencers, and they were able to push the story to number 2. These are the roles of public relations practitioners. And somehow, the Bible says that while men slept, the enemy planted. Brother, my sister, we have been sleeping for too long. I become very aggressive when it comes to public relations. Because one of my best scriptures says that the kingdom of God suffering matters, and only the violent can take it. I am violent when it comes to public relations. I am aggressive. It's my complete head to toe. I am public relations. I will attend anywhere the gospel of public relations is being preached. I will go there. Whether it's international, whether it's national, whether it's regional, whether it's continental, whether it's state, whether it's even at the local government level. I still attended last week my chapter meeting. And I have been council member, maybe I was chapter chairman 2001. But anywhere that gospel is being preached, I will be there. So, regulatory affairs. Go on, please. Just, the team, some of members of my team, let's go. Now, what is the background of this? 21st century is the current century that we're in. And in Latin, is referred to as Anno Domini era, or common era, in line with the Gregorian calendar. It's the time of freedom. What are the hallmarks of the 21st century? Freedom, technology, democracy. These are the things. Rights, rights recognition. Some of us are old enough to remember the military rule. Remember what is a degree. Did they ask you for your opinion? No. The 1999 Constitution, did they ask you for your opinion? No. It's one that do you know that's where that some of us didn't know where that phrase came in with immediate effect and automatic. It's a military term. They don't ask you for your opinion. But with the democratization of ideas, democratization of politics, democratization of governance, arose this. These are the things that are driving the 21st century. That is why it's important for sensitization. That is why it's important for advocacy, and that is why it is also important for lobbying. I will talk about part of what causes this, why you need that. There is a breakdown of trust between government and the governed, such that when government tells us good morning, we actually look at our watches, because the thinking is that the average government is lying. Yes or no? Even when they're telling us the truth. Yeah. The trust deficit is huge here because of the low level of governance. And therefore, it's very important for sensitization. And I'll come back to that. Yes, I agree it's global. But in Africa, it's even more. Because we have not seen, quote unquote, the dividends of democracy. So, all right. Let me slide. So what are the characteristics of 21st century? One, globalization. So whatever happens in what happens here, and immediately, let me give you a very simple example. This is Nkechi Alibalo, my queen, my professional queen. We were having dinner yesterday, and her husband called her. Her face just changed, and then gave us a very bad news, and her face changed. And just as We are just talking about this person less than 3 minutes when her husband called her and her face changed. And her face said, her husband said to her, don't tell anybody yet. You understand? And some other gentleman that was sitting on the next table to her, to us, just walked up to her and said, have you heard? What her husband said, don't tell anybody. I just happened. He said, have you heard? So that's why she said to me, don't shout. It was the news of Pastor Dubaya's wife, demise. Just on the table there. And just as we were there, somebody called her from America or Canada. Yeah. Is it true? The woman died in South Africa. We are in New York, and somebody is calling from Canada. Globalization. I'm just using that as an example. Knowledge-based society. We realize that some of the biggest economies is not about the resources that they own, it's about the knowledge that they have. What does Singapore have? Absolutely nothing. In Singapore, they even import sand. They don't have enough sand to build. They import sand from Malaysia, from Indonesia. But what have they been able to do? Knowledge-based economy is bigger than the resources that we have. The carbon will dry up, but the knowledge will be forever. Social media, I don't need to talk about that. Technology, and I'm moving fast because of time. One other issue is the climate change. And only last week we had COP26, where all the heads of government, things are changing. There's global warming. The weather is changing. The North Pole is what do you call it? Is thawing. Things are happening. You find out that nowadays, when you don't expect, rain can be falling in December. Torrentially. It's part of the global warming that we're having. And then, of course, urban migration. So it's rural to urban migration. Next slide. So you need skills to cope with this. And what are those skills that you need to cope with these things? One, foundational literacies. And I've spoken a bit about that. Literacy, numeracy, ICT literacy. Those are some of the skills you need to cope with this. Scientific literacy. You need to cope with this. Financial literacy. I was just challenging Innocent. What is this thing about e-money? Does anybody understand e-money?
Not yet.
No, let's be honest. If you understand e-money, put up here. How it works. I'm saying, Innocent, that is a challenge to the CBN. You are selling something to us that we don't believe in.
One of the things.
Do we even understand it?
We don't know. And you know what? You guys, and I'm not picking on you. You guys will mark your success by the number of front pages you got. You are going to mark your success by the number of the photos that appear. In average, what do you call them? ABE. Yes. And that's what you present to your governor and say, oh, we did well. But the truth of the matter is that in the room of intellectuals here, we don't even know what e-money, e-naira is. Cultural and civic literacy. What kind of competencies do you need for 21st century? Critical thinking and problem solving. Critical thinking and problem solving. My degree is in history. But I thank God for one course that I took. It's called logic. I even remember the man who taught me, the Canadian man, NPC. The ability to analyze. Many of us forget that the primary function of public relations is counseling. It's not about events. It's not about media relations. It's about what? Counseling. Mr. President, you pick a PR advisor to how many governors? Many people will think that what comes out is what you put in the newspaper. They don't know the amount of work you did in counseling. So he has the responsibility to counsel when he has to do with financial issues, when he has to do with taxation, when it has to do with housing policy, when it has to do with all kinds of things, when it has to do with education. Mr. President, because they'll come to him, they'll give them and say, Mr. President, Mr. Governor, we can't do this for X, Y, B reason. So these are the competencies that we need. Critical thinking, creativity. Creativity. How? What is creativity? Thinking out of the box. Why are we doing the same thing at the same time every time? This is the hallmark of public relation. Your ability to bring new ideas on board. Communication, collaboration, character qualities, curiosity. The curiosity kills the cat, but makes a very good PR person. Curiosity, the desire to always be better at what you do. If I am presenting the same way I presented the last time, kick me out. You want to kick me out of that. Curiosity, it's important. And of course, persistence, grit, adaptability, leadership, social and cultural awareness. I'm sure the site will send this to you. So we are talking about three things. Sensitization, the process of making somebody something more aware of something, especially a social issue. What's sensitization? Give me an example of something we've been doing sensitization lately, globally, which is what? COVID, washing of hands, the mask mandates, sensitization, vaccination. You know, I almost threw somebody out of my office from the first floor. I asked him, I said, why are you not vaccinated? Why be you? They told me that if I'm vaccinated, if I take the vaccine in future, my manhood will not stand. What did you say? What did you just say? Your manhood will not stand. Without the vaccination, what are you doing with yourself? This joker, his wife got vaccinated. So I said, think about it. If all of us that were vaccinated will die, what do you want to still be doing here? You want to marry all our wives? You want to drive all our cars? You want to live in all our houses? It's only you that are here. The rest of us were gone because the vaccination killed us. Don't you think that if we are going, you should be going with us? Can you imagine that? Let me go forward. Advocacy. You know, I can never forget it. My husband say it will not start. And in another 5-10 years, they told me that the man would. I said, has somebody taken the vaccination that the man would? Meanwhile, this joker has maybe 4 or 5 children. What else do you want to do?
Recreational activities.
Now, most sensitizations are from government to the people. You must also know that the sensitization is usually from the government to the people. Now, advocacy, on the other hand, is a process by which a person attempts to affect or influence someone else's behavior or attitude in order to reach a goal. So there are many things you're advocating for. Better living. Let me give you one of the greatest advocacy things. Can somebody help me? Gender advocacy. People don't like me to talk about this, but one of the biggest advocacy campaigns that have been successful is what? LGBTQ. When we were young, when you say somebody is gay, it means the person is lying. That's what we knew as gay. That man is gay. Now, if somebody calls you gay, you want to fight. But guess what? The LGBTQ took something that was on the back burner, something that we were talking about in hushed tones, and they have made it a front burner issue. Just like the Beijing conference. They made it a front burner issue. Now, in many countries, you have to consider them in everything that you're doing. He hasn't come to Africa, but those of us who travel to Western countries, they are not right. And some of our children are beginning to, not that they are going that way, but they sympathize with them. You understand me? And we did it by ourselves because we sent our children to school abroad. So when you say to your child, God forbid, gay people, they are human beings too. Is that right? Oh, come on now, talk to me. Yeah, it happened to me. My son said, the man said, gay, God forbid. I said, Mom, I'm not gay, but they are human beings too. They have rights. I don't think you should discriminate against them. So they effectively did this thing. And then, of course, lobbying. Any attempt by individual or private interest group to influence the decision of government. Next slide. And we talk about Nelson Mandela said education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. It's making people sensitive about issues. And we talked about some of all of this things. Next slide. And I'm going to quickly go to it. What are the strategies for 21st century now for sensitization? One, knowledge improvement. So that people can take ownership of it, you've got to explain what it is to them. Just like I was saying to Innocent and Inera. You've got to break it down to us. You've got to speak to us at the level that we will understand. Two, changing attitudes. It means that you want people to change their behavior towards a certain thing. And for them to do that, they have to see the benefit of it. Remember that campaign? Why? Is that right? Why? One of the most successful campaigns we had in this country was also MANSA.
Yeah.
Jerry Ghana. You understand? Because it brought about an attitudinal change. How many of us remember this? Andrew, I'm checking out. No water, no light. I can't even get a 10 bottle of soft drink. And then on the back of that, Beno Mario Gaye sang the song, Nigeria. Why? Till today, at the Yaba bus stop, they still queue. I think it's perhaps the only place they queue in Nigeria. You know that, they queue, you know that. Till today, Yaba bus stop. Why? They queue. All right? Focus on skills, building social support. These are the things that you can use to strategize for sensitization. Next slide. Now, what are the tips for successful sensitization? Know your audience. Know your audience. And I'm glad that I was going to do it before Vivian did it, to know the audience. How many of us are from private sector? How many of us are from public sector? The difference between public sector and private sector is that public sector seems to be more, private sector seems to be more aggressive than public sector. Not necessarily because private sector knows more. Hello, you are doing a PhD, right? So you have knowledge. But the truth of the matter is that we go for goals. You know, we are result driven. So that man from Brooks and Clay, if he goes back, he must show why he went for this conference. You understand? To you may write a report and somebody just touch it somewhere. We believe in results. That's the difference between us. Channels of influence. What are your channels of influence? You must understand your channels of influence. I told you about the influencers that we pay. How many? Do you know one of the people that collect money from us a lot is a lady called Linda Ikeji. I don't even know what she does. Honestly, I don't know what she does. But yeah, do you know a client? Once you give them a plan, if they don't see in the Ikeji there, they haven't started. Better Niger. Yeah. The relevance of the information. Some messages might sound interesting, but not really useful for your target, which is one of the reasons why I ask myself, what are we taking out of this? Because if I don't have a beacon that tells me that what I want my audience to take out of this, I can give you a lot of things that make no meaning to you and do not change your life. Then sufficient resources. Let me go because I know my time is up. So, but let's talk about advocacy. Effective advocacy is about moving government. Effective advocacy is about moving, and it's one of the things that we do at Reignite. So we're doing advocacy, excise duty on sugar. We're doing advocacy on tobacco. We're doing advocacy on beer. People want to tax more. And what the private sector is saying is that, come, look, let's work together. So many years ago, we were working for British American Tobacco. I think I can say that. And government decided that advertising tobacco was harmful. The company agreed and said, let's do what we call participatory regulation, which means both you and us, let's sit down and decide on how tobacco must be communicated. Have you noticed that when you see cigarettes, half of it now says smokers are liable to tobacco? That's part of what we need, because there's an agreement. It's called tobacco, the framework of tobacco convention. I think that's what it's called. That we are going to agree on the increment of the face of the packet. So it started from maybe 20%, I think it's now at 60%, maybe going to 70%. In fact, what the Ministry of Health is saying is that total blackout. So there's no branding, you won't know the difference between Marlboro and Benson and so on and so forth. And we are saying to government that will encourage smuggling. Yeah. Because there will be no brand differentiation. At least these tobacco companies, they are collecting money from them. You are able to regulate them. We have porous borders. If we allow that to happen, they are just going to help those who are smuggling. And then you have no way of regulating them. Something that, so you can help government. So part of publications is policy analysis. How do you analyze the politics? How do you present it to government so that government can see from the powerful, from your point of view? Advocacy is a powerful and game-changing tool for advancing policy objectives. Advocacy is not so much about lobbying the legislators, because some of us feel that it's about just going to the legislature. Advocacy more is about trying to sell the importance of a position as against what government is doing. And we have a lot of it across board. Local content, mentioning there's some policy, potential policy review that is going on. Even NIPR, we wanted to change because what we are based on that is a degree, which we have found has many gaps. And I know there's been a lot of talk about us advocating so that government can see the importance of publication and so on and so forth. On the platform, Lagos State platform, for instance, a few days ago, and Mrs. Nkechi and Badejo answered. Somebody raised it, one of these old fellows, and said, why are we not getting subvention from the government? And people are talking, look, we need to speak to the president, we need to engage him, he needs to engage the Ministry of Information so that they can reinstate our subvention. Because I understand some of these other translators, both and on both, are getting it. The question is that we even want it reinstated because maybe then we'll not be able to do certain things. Maybe it may be good for us to go on our own, be self-operating, and But those are arguments that we can take. A part of advocacy is to make sure that people who are not licensed to practice public relations do not practice public relations. Because really, it says that if you do it, you are liable to a jail term. Next one. So what is the playbook for advocacy? People power. The power of the people is greater than the people in power. I'll say that again. The power of the people is greater than the people in power. And therefore, we've got to activate that power. It's so latent. When you look at the number of people who vote, the biggest challenge for me, if I were INEC, is to mobilize people to come out and vote. In Lagos State, they have 20 million people. The last election, I think Governor Sanwo-Olu won by 500 and something thousand votes. For a state that has 20 million, is that representative enough? I'm still studying the Anambra elections. What percentage of the population?
4%.
4%. Thank you.
Voted the winner.
Voted the winner. Really, in a parliamentary system, you can't win.
Yeah. No.
In a parliament, when you hear about Lebanon, that they are trying to share power, UK, and all that, that's exactly what happened, because the law says that you cannot represent the people unless you have a certain minimum participants. How can 4% of the people choose the government? Determine. It is wrong. It is wrong. So we need to advocate. We are all talking about restructuring. Whatever it means to anybody, it's part of advocacy. Get involved. I was in there, like that's yes, you want. Thank you very much. I didn't talk to
Sorry, 74%.
Yeah.
Election.
Yeah.
I want to find out, is it 4% of
population?
Is it 4% of the Ihiala or total votes?
Total votes. What? I don't know. I have to.
The thing is, total registered voters was 2 million, but only 10% of the total registered voters voted, and only 4% of voted for the winning candidate.
Yeah.
10%. But the total was 10%.
Yeah, but even 10% is strong. Even 10% is small. 10%. What happened to the 90%?
We also look at what you're saying. We also look at, you were saying in the normal climate, that would not be accepted. But when you have parliamentary issues, even where we have security issues.
Lagos State, there was no security.
No, we're talking about
No, I'm even saying that if you talk about Lagos, I'm talking about Anambra.
Yeah.
Even look at it now. How many registered voters are in Nigeria? Please, does anybody have the number? Why won by
50 million.
50 million votes? Wait,
No, he won by 2 million.
you want the total votes involved is 50 million. If you look at it compared to the registered voter, it's low. If you are operating a parliamentary system of government, there's no way he can form a government. He can't form a government. If you are in the UK, he can't form a government. If you are in Lebanon, you can't form a government. If you are in Germany, you certainly can't form a government. Even in Israel, look, remember, what's that man's name now? Netanyahu. What happened to him? Remember, he was at God for having election. The problem he kept on having was that he didn't have the threshold to form the government. And we are asking, is that representative enough of the government? Of the people? No. So, how do we address it? We need to identify the root causes of the problem we want to change. Clearly establish objectives for the engagement. Know your stakeholders, the influencers, and how do you want to reach them to have impact? So how do I get more people to vote in Lagos State? How do I get more? All of us are talking about 2023. How do I get more people to vote? Sorry?
Advocacy.
Advocacy. I must let you know that your power is bigger than those who are in power. You know why people do that? And the politicians have already said it. One thing that I've stopped saying. So if Ikechi came to me now and said she wants to run for office, you know one of the things we say, you said you want to run for office. You can't make it. And we play into the narratives of the politicians. Because what have they done? They've weeded out an Ikechi who can be possible opposition to them. We can't do that. We need even to advocate that people who have the competencies should be in government. Should be in government. Let me tell you, I remember a story, and I can say it here. When Ashwagi became governor, the very first time, and we were in his house. I have a friend who's very close to him. And not me, you have nothing to do with me. I just happened to be there. And just, let's go and say hello to Achu and congratulate him. And we were there and said, when sitting in his library, and he walked into the library, and all of us, oh, congregations and all of it. There was a gentleman walking behind him with a bottle of small stout. And he was sipping it like this. Ah, Baba! I tried to time and said to him, Mr. Man, would you please comport yourself like the chairman of the local government that you are? We almost died out of shock. This man is the chairman of the local government. You know why he's the chairman? Because you are lying. I'm not going. And nature supports the vacuum. So there's a lot of work that we need to do. Next slide, please. We need to tell our stories well. We need acts of courage and acts of encouragement across when we are doing advocacy. Advocacy is not a small thing. When the LGBT people started, it wasn't a small group. They started incremental. We need to do that when we are doing it. And advocacy is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And we must be ready. We must be ready to have incremental changes. We must be ready to work with allies. The politicians do it very well. The person that did FSK, I would rather die than join. Yeah, and look at where we are. We must try experimentation and innovation. We're talking about advocacy now. There are many things that we're advocating for, and we must get it there. Next slide, please. We must build our communication channels. We must define those communication channels. Well, data, no, go back. Data, no, go back. Data and research. I had to make a call 2 days ago to hire somebody. And the only reason why I hired this person over the other person was the person has research knowledge. We're not doing enough research. Mr. President, I challenge you with this one before. Part of our budget and NIDA should go to independent research. I said it. We cannot be relevant if we're not producing data. We cannot be relevant if we're not producing content. And those of you who are directors, research is very simple now. You may have to spend money, but you can also do less research. What do you call that thing? Monkey survey. It's part of research. You cannot really be a communication person if you are not researching. Am I right, sir?
Yes.
Am I right, sir? Yes. You can't. There's too much depth. Mr. Jayo, I am president of PRK. Welcome. Yes. Am I right, sir? Yes. There's a depth of knowledge and data, research in public relations. And we cannot continue like that. If we want to make ourselves relevant, we need to spend more money on research. The other people do it, the marketing people do it very well. If you can audit your stock, if you can audit your staff, you must be able to audit your image. You must be able to audit people's response. Email, have you audited? You've got to audit. Do you understand? Research. Research, and more research. We as NIPR must have a very strong arm in research, such that when other people are looking for research, they should come to us. NIPR is not too small to have a director level of research. After all, we're even an institute anyway. We're not a trade organization. We're an institute. What does the institute do? We build knowledge. So it's a challenge for us also. We must engage in digital and data infrastructure. The world is changing. How things are being done. Technology is improving across board and all of that. We must do that. We must engage in capacity development and cultural orientation. Let me go there. Next one. So lobbying in the 21st century is a form of advocacy where direct approach is made. Some of us have had CBN. Again, sorry. Okay, I'll come. Have you gone to the house before? No, don't worry. I don't. Have you gone to the house before? Have you gone to face a house party? Yeah, no, maybe not you as an organization. Okay, as what you defend your budget. What do you think defending your budget is? It's lobbying now. Only last week, an organization, Ministry of Health or something, or a paracetamol said they want to spend 85 billion in buying mosquito nets. And those, they have the National Assembly call them thieves. They threw it away. On the surface of it, it may look silly. But I think that more homework was done to be able to prove that by spending 85 billion, I can save the country 1 trillion. That doesn't look so bad. Or even right, when I mean that, you're talking in terms of value. But obviously, they didn't do their homework well. Now, there's a bill that is being sponsored by NPP Elumelu, where lobbying is going to be established in Nigeria. I think it's gone through second reading. So that effectively, what does that mean? So some of us go to the National Assembly, we are not accountable. We just go there. I know Rotary, so yeah, I know what's that, Benson, and all of that. So I talk to them and all of that. It's not supposed to be like that. As a lobbying organization, I must disclose upfront. Some of the people that have been for Enron, for this, you know what the problem is? They didn't disclose. Some of the, what happens, the lawyer in America, the former, the former mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani. Part of the problem he's having is that he was lobbying for a country, but he didn't state it. He didn't declare. So in future, you are going to have that is coming. Alright? So as public relations practitioners, we must be prepared for that era. You can't just go to the National Assembly and try to get them to do stuff for you. So lobbying in its form includes advocacy and other ways. I think I mentioned that. And it gives stakeholders access to development and public policies. Lobbyists are advocates in influencing government, representing interests, and so on and so forth. A wide variety of interests and stakeholders. Next slide. What is the practice? We can do it through contracting. And, yes, sir, please.
You talk about lobbying in the National Assembly. I have also look at the situation where, the last as we know them, lobbying is one thing, and the other one is another thing. How do you compare it?
You see,
funding the lobby.
Like I said, so let me use Jaya as an example. APC is forward. So he knows a lot of all those APC people. He can go to them at night and say, "Good challenge." Let me use Jaya. At night, go to them and say, "We are coming tomorrow. These are the things we are presenting to you." And so on and so forth. Sometimes they even, with due respect, NTA don't record this. They are too lazy to read the document. We are the ones that do the summary of the document. That's what they will say there. The next one. Okay, let me give you an example of what we did. We used to work for Lafarge. And one day, Dangote Cement woke up and said, the building collapse that we have is because the grade of cement that Lafarge produces is 32.5. And the grade that it requires for a house to stand is 42.5. Now, Dangote's factories are more modern, so they can produce 42.5. Lafarge, in terms of, because it has old factories, it produces only about 30% of 42.5. Maybe one or two machines produce 42.5. But the truth of the matter is that many of our parents' houses were built by Lafarge. It used to be called Wapo in those days. Blue Elephant. Your father's house in the village, is it Dangote cement? Did it fall? No. But what happened is that, and I'm talking about a way where we did lobbying. So Dangote then went, I'm mentioning names. Dangote went to the Standard Organization of Nigeria and Standard Organization of Nigeria issued a new technical standardization, which says that you can only use 32.5 to plaster house. You can't use it to build blocks. Effectively throwing Lafarge out of business. So we had to go back. We had to go to the National Assembly. What did we do? First and foremost, we knew all the places that Lafarge had factories. So we had to make sure all their representatives, whether they are on that committee or not, they were present. Because what we're telling Suraj, who is a representative, is that you know there's a cement company owned by Lafarge in your village or your town. If it closes down, you know you're gone. So whether he was on the committee or not, you know the rules. And as you're a member of the committee, I'm sure that you know, you can sit on the high table and ask questions. So a lot of them came from different places, rivers, from the okay. It was full house. Then secondly, we then produced the fact we got the Nigerian COREN, Council of Registered Engineers of Nigeria, Nigerian Building Council, and all of those people. And we got them to say, cement is just one of the aggregates of a building. It's like mixing garri. Your garri can be thick, or it can be light, or making eba. There are other aggregates of concrete. Sand is an aggregate of concrete. Granite is an aggregate of concrete. Rod, steel rod is an aggregate of keeping the building up. If you're supposed to use a certain gauge of steel and you use something small, we all know maybe something that happened in 21st story. It will come down because it cannot bear the load. Very simple. But do you know what killed the whole thing for us? Who is the MD of Dangote at that time? Cement. A man called Joseph Makoji. Where did Joseph Makoji come from? No. For 20 years, he was the MD of Lafarge. So we now say, think about this. So, fortunately for us, the platform Makoji. So we now ask Makoji, sir, you are the MD of Lafarge for maybe 15 years or something. Does that mean you are superintending time? Yes, I know that. Does that mean you are superintending over a product? There is some standard that was making houses fall, and you did it so well that Dangote now decided to recruit you. End of. I don't think that report saw the light of day. So, first, what did they do? The Standard Organization of Nigeria withdrew the new technical guidelines that we didn't start. And I can tell you, we did a few more. The export processing zone against Port Harcourt oil and gas, where they said anywhere that they're doing anything oil and gas, they should report to them, not there. We brought a World Bank expert to say that there's only one export processing authority, but you can have several zones. So ONE was trying to usurp the role of NEMSA. So I can give you many of what we've done. But what did we do so that government policy, if we didn't do that, government was going to sign off on the fact that 32.5 should not be used to build houses. And that would have been the end of Lafarge in Nigeria. So you saw some campaign. Maybe some of you will not really remember they saw the National Theatre. Have you seen that campaign where they say Lafarge building? That was part of the campaign to show that the national standard has been standing, national stadium has been standing, this place has been standing. These were all built by Lafarge. There was no Dangote at that time, including Cocoa House. Yes, we also did Cocoa House. All right. Okay. Practice the use of gifts and honoraria. Now part of the lobbying law. If you give, you can't give a lawmaker more than a certain gift. I think the amount is what? Jaye, can you remember? You can't give him.
I think it's one. The law actually set a minimum threshold.
Yeah, you can't give him. And anything you give him beyond that, he must give it back to the government. So if the government organization can give him the laptop, he must declare it and give it back to government. It happens in some of those places. Movement of officials, blah, 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 let me not talk about that. Practice and content. You have this slide. I think we've spoken enough. Influencing times, go on. In conclusion, for the world, especially emerging markets like Nigeria, the development canvas of the 21st century has largely been redesigned, like COVID-19 pandemic. And for us, at this year's NIPR Directors Conference, this reality must continuously occupy our minds and inspire us as communication professionals to take proactive and innovative steps that will ensure that the nuggets in this presentation will guide how we develop strategies and execute impactful and value-added programs to our organizations and companies. I end with one video. Can you play the video? Okay, go back. It says, no, go back. The more we know about other cultures or others, the more open-minded, tolerant, and global we become. This was by Sama, Morocco. We all know about this NSAS movement. That was some form of advocacy in itself. Let's go. Let's show the video, and I end with that. Why is open? Any questions? Any contributions? Have I lost you?
No, anything.
What did I tell you at the beginning? What was you? You see, the markers are looking. The first thing you do is that around the time you will clap. Only this table is happy. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Volume.
Check on the video page. Check on the video.
I'm not sure the volume is helping us. But basically, what this influencer was talking about was how you cannot sell your goods. Yeah, use the mic. Use the mic.
On the laptop.
Yeah. Start from the beginning. And can you get rid of this demo feature? Okay. I'm sorry. The equipment is not helping.
Okay, I think I get it.
If it works, we'll talk. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, that is my presentation on sensitization, advocacy, and governance. All right. While the video is playing, questions. Let's just please more contributions. Thank you. Let me start with my question.
Thank you very much. I think you should start a church of public relations. Because you're just, you have the right temperament of a preacher. I would like us to return to the question he asked in a coy manner, the cost of lobbying, particularly at the National Assembly. I mean, with the executive, it's a lot easier. You know, and you've given us concrete examples of what you were able to do. But he asked the question, the monies required, and I suspect, my president, is one of the reasons the NIPR Act is yet to be amended, even though we agree that there are aspects of it that require amendment. How do we overcome that problem? And this question is not to you, sir. It is to this audience. Some of us have a little more experience with relating with National Assembly people. Even if we can't eliminate the money entirely, how do we reduce it to manageable proportions? Thank you.
Thank you. We take all the questions together and then get. Okay, madam, let's give Becky.
I'd like you to address how do we confront the moral issues associated with
Morally, so say please, I'm not the only one to answer the question here. So, okay, let me stop. The president.
Sir, I covered the National Assembly for about 7 years. And the concept of not that open-minded, because outside our client, people make it a kind of evocation that there is a group that their job is lobbying and they are paid for it. So I think our responsibility there should be how to popularize lobbying in Nigeria.
Let me say to you immediately that lobbying is already.
Yes.
That's a lot of the people who have left the National Assembly. That's what they do, they lobby. But it's just not institutionalized. I think that's the framework. So the problem is that we need to build a framework for its operation. So, for instance, part of it, which NIPR must be aligned to, you are going to be required to be licensed to be a lobbyist. So, NIPR needs to get into that ahead. So, we need to engage a which says that for you to be a lobbyist, perhaps you need to come for training with the institute. So we need to know something about parliamentary, executive lobbying, parliamentary lobbying, that we need to do that. So this is a good opportunity for NIPR. Don't let's wait until the degree. Now they are at second reading. If we go to him now, he says, "I'm sorry, it's only one word to amend." So Mr. President is something we should do. Let's engage him. We are already engaging in pre-night public affairs. But that's on an individual note. I think it would be better if professionally we institutionalize the lobby. Yes. Let me, okay, yes. Chairman also.
Thank you very much. I think we are also underestimating the power of youth culture. And SARS, for example, LGBTQ, they are the drivers of the messages on social media. And it's like a way that whatever youth culture invites, marketing, advertising follows, because the marketing and advertising is always geared toward the youth. And even older people are supposed to aspire towards a youthful life. So I think youth culture also dictates this kind of cultural thought. So many things are happening underground in the social media world, and there's an increasing gap between that world and our world here. That I think it's a challenge to really bridge that gap, because they are going to grow up to take our place as well in the society.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I couldn't add more. Let me first take it, then I'll come to for this one. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for the brilliant presentation. But my own concern is about, we've talked so much about maybe lobby at the external level, but I'm interested in maybe at the corporate level, because even many of us work for organizations that don't even understand or appreciate the role of PR, the role of communication. And I know all of this we have mentioned: sensitization, advocacy, lobbying. Even at the corporate level, they are key. Because even as a PR person, you might not function optimally. Even your company, your organization does not understand what you are doing or the importance of PR. So I'm saying, what are the tips where you are as a corporate communication person is supposed to function as the lobby officer, as the advocacy officer, as a sensitization officer? What are the tips that are necessary to be deployed to succeed in this platform?
Thank you. All right. On my way here, let me just quickly stop at you.
All right, thank you very much. And brilliant presentation. I think the only surprise is that people got something less, really. Okay, so, but my point is, I think related to what he said, sensitization, advocacy, and lobbying. Most times we know what to do. But in a situation where the CEO does certain things without carrying you along, or maybe some mistakes have already been made, now you cannot come out publicly to contradict your CEO. So other than just defending the indefensible in certain cases, what else can you do to make sure that you get things right? Thank you.
Please, other people are allowed to answer the questions. Let me do chair, then I'll come to you.
Well, I think a lot has been said about democracy. Like saying that lobbying is a new thing. It's really not a new thing. Even in our traditional setting, we had our own form of lobbying. In the villages, where the leaders, the opinion holders, and all that, we did deep lobbying in our traditional setting. But what we needed to do now is to professionalize lobbying and categorize it, like we have said. Because there's lobbying in politics, there's lobbying in every other area. But actually, it's the same skill that you use in the traditional setting that you also use in this particular setting. Well, adding your profession, adding your skills. Yeah, it's like being upgrading it. Okay? And then we just talked about lobbying in corporate sector. I think it's also the same skills. But in the corporate setting, yeah, you have to have the skill to apply. And that is why we have diplomacy in the workplace. So if you are able to apply that diplomacy, then you know when and how to apply your lobbying skills. So it's still the same skills that you require, but application.
Thank you. Just before I come to you, Jai, let me give you a typical example. I have a board. Even though the company was formed, I have a board. We have quarterly meetings because I want to be strong on issues of corporate governance. And I remember that initially I used to have problems with my board until I realized that before every board meeting, I was going to see every board director. Depending on what I want approved, I know which director to go to because I know the person who champions those kind of things. It's still part of some lobbying. So I remember one day I was supposed to have done something and I hadn't done it, and it was the board meeting, and I knew he was going to come up at the board meeting. So I went to one man, he was the oldest man of the board there. He said, "Sir, this thing that board is going to ask me today, let me just admit to you, I haven't done it. Please cover me." He said, "Yeah, no problem, let me go." So we got to the board meeting, and he sat and just got to open and said, "Mr. Chairman, I refer to the minutes of the last board meeting where the managing director was asked to do A, B, C, D. Can we receive a report from him?" I thought to myself, this is the man I went to. What's wrong with this man? Look at the guy I went to go and talk to. Mr. Chairman, we'd like to hear from the managing director. Let him tell us how far he's gone with the assignment that the board gave to him. So I said to him, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, we're still working on it, blah, 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 blah. Just as I was talking, Mr. Chairman, it's evident that the MD has not done what we asked him to do. I will ask the board to reprimand him, and let's get this matter down to the next meeting. So when the meeting finished, unfortunately for him, because then the driver hadn't come by the time the meeting finished. So, sir, you guys I went to. He said, oh, they don't share. Now small people they do. I introduced the subject so that I can finish the subject. That I knew the way he was going. I seen the director beside me who was already looking at it, reading it, and I felt that if I didn't introduce it, if that director introduced it, he would be the one to control the narrative. See how I started it, and see how I ended it. That was lovely. I learned something.
All right. Thank you very much, YD. Mr. President, and all distinguished fellows of the NIPR here present, so that my fellowship is not removed from me. So let me quickly do that. Let me say this. First and foremost, lobbying is not new in the Nigerian system. Take note of my word, in the Nigerian system. And as I speak to you, before in the Yelumelu, efforts have indeed started to build an industry, to institutionalize the practice. It was started by one of our colleagues in Lagos, who is also a member of the NIPR, Ken Ebami, who used to be the Deputy Chief Press Secretary to Ashua Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and later became a commissioner under the Yomi and Badejo. So the Association of Political Consultants, Africa, APCA, is already established here in Nigeria. One of the things APCA does is not just to practice, is to raise, the practice of lobbying, train people, because APCA is affiliated with the International Association of Political Consultants. So that body is already here. Now, my plea, Mr. President, is that you please take up this challenge that YBO has thrown at the leadership of the NIPR. When I was coming here today, I asked myself, why am I being asked to come and speak about conflict resolution? I said, is it because Nigeria is already like a theater of conflict already? But deep inside of me, I was saying to myself, given the timing of this conference, I thought that what we will be dealing with at a time like this will be about, repositioning the practice of public relations. So that when all of us who are seated here today in this room, the revolution can start from here at the Ibom resort, such that when we begin to see what will happen at AMCOM, we can say, that gentleman who came to Akwa Ibom and started this revolution at AMCOM. Let me give you an example. Years ago, we were consultants to Polaris Bank. Shortly after it was taken over, Skybank was taken over by AMCOM. And one of the feats we achieved, and the bank paid us very well. CBN representatives were all they paid us stupendous amount of money because they were so impressed. You know what? That bank did not lose, because what everybody expected was that once that announcement was made, that bank would collapse because there would be panic. People would just besiege the branches and all of that. But you know what? Some public relations consultants were involved in the advisory process. One, we told them it should be announced on the Friday, so you can't take out your money on the weekend. By all through that weekend, if you go to the head office of the defunct Skybank, you will think it was a Monday. What was going on? Engagement on the phone, to customers, institutional customers, and all of that. People did not withdraw their deposits. Now, but a gentleman woke up one day and just announced, to our shock, he said, the sunset year for Polaris Bank is so and so here. Just name a year. And the first thing I did was to put a call through to the MD of Polaris Bank. Were you aware of this? He said, yes, but you warned us, you remember in your presentation. I said, yes. I then said, okay, you know what? So how do we do it? Do we now go out and tell the AMCOM, MD that he was talking rubbish? No, we won't do that. So we again had to manage the process, and the bank stayed healthy. Go and look at the financials of Polaris Bank in the last few years. You know what? It is because people like us who are seated in this room were involved. And this is my appeal. Answer your question, sir. Answer your question. The truth is that, because your question is also linked with this question. The truth is that, and that's why I feel this conference this season, in terms of timing, should be more about starting that mind revolution among ourselves with regards to repositioning public relations. You cannot ignore me if I'm the public relations person in your organization. It is impossible, because I will be the repository of the facts that you need to succeed as my CEO. And one of the things I've said to some of the presidential hopefuls who have come to meet us, come and work for us, say we have a good rate, you have to sign up to sign. That I must have unfettered access to you. I can't be talking to your PA. I must have unfettered access to you. And this, I think, if this all we achieve when my session starts, and we dovetail this into what the foundation that YBO has laid, I can share my presentation through the secretariat, and we will all be back, and we will go back to our respective destination, charged up, because this is the time. Elections are about to take place now. Both the corporate and public sector are going to play. And we, as public relations, everything that YBO has said, the people like me, I have given everything 100%. And I think that this is the path for us to go. If I have the passion of the organizer, I will bring up when the time comes. Because we need to also rethink even our offerings and the solutions we are recommending to not just our clients, but even to our managers. Thank you very much.
Well, what YB has done is to set me up. Because if I have to talk after my president, I don't know what more, but I will say out of heart to what has been said. I think what I've noted down here, this all boils down to what I call scientific public relations. Scientific public relations. Because what we have done, a lot of times, we just pick it from the top. Yoruba will say, that means we are seeing the lay person working. I am saying, why I'm working like this? The leg, which is working, then you know that there's a problem somewhere. What is that problem? The orientation. Now, last week I was lecturing some of my students at Open University, and the issue of Tiwa Savage came up. And one of them said, sir, I read somewhere that thing was a PR stunt by Tiwa Savage. And I quickly had to correct that. What is PR? What is public relations? The class was principle and part of public relations. That was what I was thinking. And she said that video was a PR stunt. So that means from the beginning, she does not understand what public relations is. Because how will you tell me that release of a sex tape by a person of that caliber is a PR stunt? To what end? What mutual benefit? What mutual understanding? What goodwill does she want to get by releasing that as a PR stunt? Which means, foundationally, there is a problem with our understanding. So, for those of us who are here, I'm very sure all of us understand it. So, we need to now start that orientation from the beginning. And that takes me back to my colleague from CPAS. When I started working where I am, the first thing I told my boss was we must be registered with the Nigerian Public Relations as a corporate organization. It was a heated debate because my boss is trained in the UK, he's a member of another. I have this, I said no. I brought out the degree, and I have it in my work, in my drawing office, it's always there. I showed him, see the section you will be violating if you go and you can practice. It's like you driving your vehicle around without the vehicle license. The day the policeman will arrest you, that Yankee driver that's going will not be able to help you. And my boss said, okay, we did it. Our former registrar was there, Mr. Badejo, came to our office, did all the investigation, we got the license. Just a year or two later, we got onto an account, that is the MTN account. And there was a brouhaha. I'm saying this just for the purpose of knowledge sharing, please. We were 3 agencies that were signed on by MTN. Then PR town leadership wasn't happy about the manner in which that signing on was done because some of the agencies that were signed on were not members of NIPR and were not members of PR. Guess what? My agency was the only member of NIPR and PR, updated member. Of all the issues we had in the paper, talking about them, my agency was not mentioned anywhere because we were compliant. So what I'm saying is that there is a need for that orientation first to be carried out. Then 2, let's talk about lobbying. What is the perception of lobbying? I can say the perception of lobbying presently is negative. So that is why it is difficult for people to place it in the place where we are looking at today. It's still negative. So the orientation must come, and I would say when I talk about scientific public relations, we have to start building it. 1, our curriculum. So that by the time we start producing, those who are producing have an understanding of what we are talking about. So that by the time they get to the field and they need to apply, they will go in with that mindset. So they won't see lobbying as negative. Even you lobby your wife now. Sometimes your wife wants to cook titles and you want to eat local fish. And you have to find a way to let her know that madam can cook her own job. Forget the fact that you're dropping the money. So all of these things are part of the things I was suggest. So let us start from there. I'm very supportive of why we always talk about research. Affirmative PR, we have always been there. I was the chairman of the subcommittee for Lagos State chapter, and we developed a very loaded paper which we have forwarded to the national budget. We will see how it's going to be done so that we can start from the beginning and get to that point. That's my also thanks.
Thank you. I think those are the contributions that we have. Thank you very much, NIPR, for giving me the opportunity to share knowledge. Mr. President, Chairman, and all the members of the organization. I'm sure the paper will be shared. Unfortunately, I may not be able to continue tomorrow with you. I will not because I have to leave today. But thank you. And remember when you're scoring, what you use call me. Say that again. Thank you very much.